Guys, it's Miss Stefan, and today we're going to be reading a book together. It's called Thomas Edison. This is a nonfiction book, and it's going to tell us all about the life and discoveries of Thomas Edison. Just before we start reading, let's go back really quickly and look at our vocabulary and our end tasks for this unit. We know that we're working on the process of discovery and the development of inventions. Our first vocab word is inventor, and that's one who invents, especially a new device or process. An invention, something invented, like a new gadget, device, machine, or method. We also know at the end of this week, after we read this Thomas Edison book, and then later in the week a George Washington Carver book, that at the end we're going to be writing a 3-paragraph essay comparing and contrasting how their inventions impacted society. So today, as we're reading the Thomas Edison book, I want you guys to be taking notes on his inventions, on how they impacted society, and any other important details that you find as we read together. Right here I have guiding questions for you for the book, and we're going to check in on these as we read. The first is, what was the process of discovery like for Thomas Edison? Our next guiding question, what are some of his inventions? And finally, what is an example of one of his inventions that helped solve a problem or need of society? So you guys could just write Thomas Edison down on a piece of paper and get ready to take your notes underneath, or you could take a minute, pause the video, and write down these guiding questions to help you and write down your answers to those specific questions, whatever works best for you. Just know at the end, you're going to use this information to write an essay comparing and contrasting Thomas Edison to our next inventor later in the week. Okay, so let's get reading. Here we go.
National Geographic Readers. Thomas Edison by Barbara Kramer. A great inventor. Have you ever watched a movie or listened to a recording of music? Have you ever turned on a light? If so, you can thank one man, Thomas Edison. He made all these things possible with his inventions. Inventions.
Sorry, just let me pause a second. So right now they're introducing us to the great inventor of Thomas Edison. And right here, have you ever watched a movie or listened to a recording of music? For sure, all of us have. And Thomas Edison is really the person we have to thank for that. He's the one who started figuring out how we could actually record movies and music and listen to them for entertainment. So the cool thing about this book is that I want to point out, this book goes in what's called chronological order. It's actually going to go through the life of Thomas Edison in order from his childhood, through his adult life, and all the way through the end of his life. And it's going to illustrate for you through all the times in his life, even as a child, he was an inventor, because we're learning that children can be inventors too. They've actually invented a lot of great things, like the popsicle, trampolines, all kinds of different things. So let's see, for going through this book, we're going to start back in his childhood and see how he got started in his journey to be an inventor.
Early learning. Thomas was born in Milan, Ohio, on February 11th, 1847. When he was 7, his family moved to Port Huron, Michigan. In school, Thomas daydreamed. His teacher said he could not learn. So after only 3 months of school, his mother decided to teach him at home. Learning from his mother was fun. She taught Thomas to read. When he was 10, he got a book of science experiments. Experiments. He tried every one of them in a lab he built in the family's basement.
Okay, so I just want to pause a second. So like I said, chronological order. So we're starting back at the beginning of Thomas Edison's life. And this is something really interesting. We already see as a kid, even though his teachers were saying, like, you can't do this, they didn't think he even knew how to learn. He was a really, really incredibly smart person. So his mom spent a lot of time with him at home, and he learned to read quickly. And not only did he learn to read, but he was able to even make science experiments and his own inventions since he was only 10 years old. So a really similar age to you guys. So this is showing us when he got his start. Also, one other point I wanted to make out about this informational text, you notice on each of the pages or every 2 pages, there's a heading. So here it's early learning. This heading is telling us what this section is going to be about. All of the details, all of the information on these pages, it's all going to connect to this main idea of early learning that's told in our heading. Okay? So let's keep reading.
A working boy. Thomas was only 12 when he got his first job. He sold newspapers and snacks to people on a train. At the train station, Thomas liked to hang out with the telegraph operators. They sent messages to other train stations. Watching them, Thomas knew what he wanted to do next. He would learn to be a telegraph operator.
So that's so cool. So we're already seeing, when we go back to our guiding questions, what was the process of discovery like for Thomas Edison? We already know 2 things. He started even when he was a kid. He would work on these cool science experiments in his basement. So he was the kind of person who, when he saw a problem or saw something interesting in his life, his process of discovery was that he would just start playing around, trying new things. He was constantly inventing, constantly thinking of theories of ways to solve problems and trying to come up with a solution, even since he was a little kid. We also see he's already getting interested in the telegraph or ways to send messages. And he already, as a young kid, had his goal of being a telegraph operator. Again, in this nonfiction text or informational text, we have some captions here. So it says words to know, telegraph, a machine that uses electricity to send messages by wire from one person to another. So people used this before we had our cell phones. And that's a fact. When Thomas was working as a newsboy, he actually built his own telegraph. And we know he was really young here. He was only around 12 or 13. He and a friend practiced sending messages back and forth from their homes. So he was that kind of person. He was really an innovator, right? Whenever he saw a problem, a need, or got an idea, he right away started trying out different things to come up with new inventions to solve the problem. This is really interesting. This is just trying to show you that when Thomas Edison lived, this was a long time ago in the past. So the author wants you to see how different life was then. In his time is our heading. And we know that's telling us, it's going to show us all different things that happened when Thomas Edison was a boy. Thomas Edison was a boy in the 1850s, and many things were different from how they are now. I'm just going to go over the pictures that they show us, and then when you guys do your second read, you can read in more detail. So we see school was different. And we see that kids back then actually had to go to work. They often worked in farms or mines or factories, kids your age. And then they would only go to school part-time. And many of them did not go to school past 6th grade. It was very different back then. Transportation. Okay, you see people got around by a horse and buggy. Communication. Telegraph was how people sent messages. There were no cell phones. The toys were very different. And we learned that president at the time was Abraham Lincoln. And like I said, when you guys are doing your second read, you could look through and explore these ideas.
First, inventions. Thomas began work as a telegraph operator when he was 16. He liked to work nights. During the day, he worked on his inventions. He got his first patent in 1869. It was for a vote counting machine to be used by legislature.
Sorry, to be used by legislators. So I just wanted to pause because right here in the caption, the author is giving us some information. The author is telling us some words we need to know. We see a patent is an official paper that says no one else can make or sell an inventor's work. So when you come up with something of your own, you get a patent, so nobody else can take that idea or get money from that idea, except for you. And then we see legislators are a group of people who have the power to make and change laws. Okay? And I meant to point out here, they're just showing you how to break apart the word to help you better understand how to read it. I'll finish reading so it doesn't start over again. Sorry. He got his first patent in 1869. It was for a vote counting machine to be used by legislators in making laws, but no one wanted to buy it. But Thomas did not give up. He worked on other inventions, such as ways to make the telegraph work better. And then here's a fact to know. Thomas hired people from all over the world to work with him. They helped turn his ideas and sketches or drawings into new inventions. So these are some things that you could be writing down too. This is all part of his, we look back here, his process of discovery. You're learning all the different ways that he started discovering and inventing new things.
Always working. Thomas was so busy working, he did not have time to think about getting married. Then, in 1871, when he was 24, he met 16-year-old Mary Stilwell. He liked her right away, and they were married a few months later on Christmas Day. In his own words, there is no substitute for hard work. Thomas and Mary had 3 children. Thomas loved his family, but he did not spend much time with them. He was always working. In 1876, he opened a lab in Menlo Park, New Jersey. There, he often worked all day and into the night. When he got tired, he took a nap on a lab table.
Okay, so this is telling us about his life, right? Like I said, we're going in chronological order. So we already looked at his childhood and his first jobs. And now we're seeing, even as he was a young adult and got married, he was so devoted, he was so focused on his work that even though he loved his family, he actually didn't spend too much time with them. He was always working, always trying out new inventions day and night.
The Wizard. One of Thomas's early inventions was the phonograph, which recorded sound and played it back. That's a fact. Thomas thought his phonograph could be used to record books for the blind. Thomas had an idea for a new machine. Finally, he was ready to test it. He shouted the poem, "Mary Had a Little Lamb," into the machine. The machine played it back. Thomas and his workers stayed up all night having fun with the new machine. They called it the phonograph.
Okay, I'm just going to pause again a second here. So again, when we ask this question of what is an example of one of the inventions that helped solve a problem or need of society, he actually came up with this phonograph because he was hoping to record books for the blind. Blind people are people that can't see, so he wanted a way for them to enjoy books as well. So he was always trying to solve problems or needs for our society. And out of it, he ended up coming up with this machine, the phonograph, that could record sound. Here is just going to show some 7 awesome facts. I'll let you go ahead and read through these on your own when you guys are doing the second read of the book. Just some neat facts to know about Thomas Edison. Okay, so in this page, we're going to get to one of his most famous inventions about the light bulb.
Lights on! Thomas was soon working on his next idea. He wanted to make an electric light. Electricity had been around for a long time, but no one knew how to light a house with it. Instead, people used candles, or oil, or gas lamps.
Okay, so right there, there's the problem. There's the need for society. People already had electricity at this time, but they couldn't figure out how to actually light up their house. When people walked into the house, they didn't have just a light switch that they could turn on. They didn't have a floor lamp. Okay? They had to actually go and get candles or oil and pour it into these gas lamps like you see here and light it. So Thomas was really trying to solve this problem to make life easier for people. And again, I'll read this page just so it doesn't start over again. To make an electric light, Thomas needed something small that could be heated inside a bulb to make it glow. This small thing was called the filament. Thomas and his workers tried hundreds of things. The best answer was a thin piece of bamboo. And there we go, talking about his process of discovery again, right? We're always going back to these guiding questions. When he can't figure out the answer to a problem, Thomas Edison never gave up. He didn't just try one thing. He tried again and again. He tried something different. He tried it 3 and 4 times. He kept trying and experimenting until he got something right. And let's look at his own words right here in this caption. Here's a quote. I can never find the thing that does the job best until I find the ones that don't. And I think this is a really important quote. Sometimes when we fail or have troubles, we want to give up in life, right? When we're trying something new. But that's the best way to find the best answer to our problems. We're going to keep trying and trying and trying until you get the job right or find the answer to your problem. And Thomas Edison is a great example of this.
In his own words, genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. Thomas had a working light bulb, but he was not done yet. He made lamps and switches to turn the lamps off and on. He built power stations to make electricity. He used underground wires to carry that power to homes. It took him 4 years to invent everything he needed to light homes with electricity.
So just to go back to what we were saying about his process of discovery and how he keeps trying and trying and trying, it took him 4 years. That's a really long time. It wasn't like it happened overnight. It took him 4 years to not just create a light bulb, but to create all of the different parts and components and things that he needed to actually light people's homes with electricity. And here in his quote where he said, genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration, what he's saying there, he's saying people could be smart, right? That's like 1% out of 100. The other biggest part of it is that 99%. Perspiration is another word for sweat. So he's saying it's really mostly the hard work and taking the time to keep trying. That's what makes people successful, and that's what makes inventions and inventors successful too.
Changes. In 1884, Mary Edison died. Thomas was sad and lonely. Then, in 1885, he met Mina Miller, and they married a year later. Thomas and his wife, Mina, enjoy an automobile ride.
Okay, so this is just showing, like we said, it's going in chronological order, so it's going through his life. And it's showing as he got older, his first wife passed away. But then eventually he remarried and he ended up moving to a home in New Jersey. Okay? So this is going through his whole life, like I said, chronological order from childhood until he was an older man.
Always inventing. Thomas went back to work on his phonograph. He had invented it to record people speaking. Now he began making records so people could listen to music on it. He also invented a movie camera and a machine to show short movies.
Okay, so just to cut it off, sorry. So Here we're saying he's always inventing. So even when he came up with his biggest invention, the light bulb and getting electricity into homes, he never gave up. It was part of his identity, part of who he was, to keep being an inventor, to keep inventing, and to keep solving problems in society. So we see that he started making records so people could have fun and listen to music. He invented a movie camera, all kinds of things for people to enjoy for entertainment. And let me just follow in here again so it doesn't start reading over. It shows here's his machine for viewing movies. It looked very different than it does nowadays when we could just connect to the internet and watch things on Netflix. The technology was very different then. Thomas worked on many other inventions too. In all, he got 1,093 patents. Remember, a patent is when you get recognition, you get named for creating something, so no one else can claim that they made it. That was more than any other inventor until the year 2000. Here's some facts, our captions here. Thomas began losing his hearing when he was a child. He said it helped him be a better inventor because he wasn't distracted by noises around him while he was working. So just think, Thomas Edison is also an example of someone who perseveres no matter what. When he was a kid, his teacher said, "Oh, you can't learn, you can't do it." He didn't let that stop him. He kept working and reading and inventing and ended up being one of the most famous inventors of all time. And then he started losing his hearing as well when he was a child. But instead of giving up, he actually used that to help him become a better inventor. So he's a great example of how even our weaknesses can become great strengths. And if we see down here, when we talk again about chronological order in texts and informational ones, we often see a timeline. And this is a way for us to better understand the passage of time. We see in 1847 when he was born, and we go through all of his most important life events until his death in October 18th, 1931. And again, you can read through that more slowly on your second read and collect any more information that you want to in your list of facts about Thomas Edison.
A great honor. Thomas began experimenting when he was a boy. More than 70 years later, he was still inventing. He worked until a few months before his death on October 18th, 1931. He was 84 years old. People across the country were sad. At 10 p.m. on October 21st, 1931, they turned off their lights for 1 minute. It was a way to thank the man who had brought electricity into their homes and changed their lives. Thomas Edison made the world a better, easier place to live. We still use his inventions every day.
Okay, and here's a photo insert showing him with President Herbert Hoover, right? So he got to meet a lot of famous people in his life, and he was honored a lot by presidents and important people for all the great work that he did. And again, one of his famous quotes, "I think work is the world's greatest fun." So he's someone who actually found joy in his work and joy in what he did. Okay, so that's everything for our book today. Next steps for you. There's a quiz written in here. Don't worry about that. I want you to go to the end of the book. Again, it has some picture vocabulary if you want to look into that more thoroughly on your second read, because we know good readers always read at least 2 times. Great readers read 3. That's the best way you're going to understand this new information. So when you're reading it on your own again, I want you to write down all of these notes to match up with our guiding questions, right? What was his process of discovery and invention? What were some of his great inventions? And how did he help to solve problems or needs in society with his inventions? Then finally, when you finish the book on your second read, then I want you guys to do the quiz. Text me when you're done. Send me a photo of all of the great facts that you found about Thomas Edison. Send me a picture of the quiz you completed. Send me an email, send me a DM on Instagram, anything that's easiest for you. I just want to see you guys on Epic reading the second time and make sure you're getting this great information about Thomas Edison. Be on the lookout on Thursday afternoon for your next read together book. We're going to be looking at George Washington Carver and seeing what an incredible inventor he was. And then we're going to go finally into our assignment together about comparing and contrasting these two great inventors. I hope you had a great time reading along with me, and I'll talk to you soon.